Minister Kaba, first, thank you very much for taking your time and accept our interview. Congratulations first being the President of Security Council. So how's everything going so far?
Very well. We are now 2 weeks into our presidency of the UN Security Council, but we got elected on the 6th of June, a little over 1 year ago, overwhelmingly, and for the past 7 months, Sierra Leone has been in the council. What is, in fact, very much crucial about our being in the council at the moment is that today the world is fraught with myriad of conflicts, and Sierra Leone came to the UN Security Council with a portmanteau of knowledge from building peace, maintaining peace, and now we want to share our experience with the council, for the many conflicts that are in Africa, in West Africa, and the world as large.
I believe many people said that the problem now for the Security Council is the lack of unity. And Sierra Leone, as a unity builder, how do you assess this problem of unity in the Council?
Of course, the days are changed. We now live in a world that is more or less a multipolar world, which means there are other new powers that have emerged. And because there is equipotential amongst these countries that are in the Security Council, especially the permanent members, interests have become very much profound. And so every member wants to protect its own interests. And in doing so, Africa is disadvantaged. And so our being in the council, especially His Excellency the President, Dr. Julius Maada Bio, chosen the topic of maintenance of international peace and security, in this case, trying to redress the historical injustice that has been meted to Africa since the formation of the UN Security Council some 79 years ago. And so the choice that the President made on the reform of the Security Council is timely, it's crucial, and it's utterly important. It's very important because you've already stated it. The ineffectual nature of the United Nations Security Council calls for its overview, a reconfiguration of the membership of the UN Security Council with respect to geographical representation and with respect to the need, especially for Africa, a continent that has been left behind in all of these decision-making institutions, because most of the issues that are discussed in the Security Council happen to be affecting the African continent. A continent of over 1.3 billion people certainly deserves its voice to be heard in the Security Council. And because voices like the moral voice of Africa is absent in the Security Council, especially in the permanent category, I think it is time for us to expedite the reform process, to make it more democratic, to make it more representative, and to make it very much effective to mitigate and prevent the many, many novel challenges that we have, such as climate change, violent terrorism, and discrimination.
Minister, the other day when we have this signature event on the maintenance of peace and security, your President, President Bio, proposed a very bold plan to have 2 permanent African members as well as 2 extra non-permanent elect members for the Security Council, which means there will be 7 African Security Council members. Would that be too much?
It wouldn't be too much. I mean, if we consider proportionality, and I think Africa deserves not only its membership in the non-permanent category, but in the permanent category. It is a prestige that our continent deserves, because Africa is no longer, is no longer a pass-through continent. It's a continent that invites real people to bring in substantial investment, because Africa holds the future. The request which the President presented yesterday to the UN Security Council for the reform of the Council itself is not born from his own personal aspiration. Come to think of it, Sierra Leone is a very little country in West Africa. If we say Africa is going to be represented in the UN Security Council in the permanent category, we will find it very difficult to fight with the other hegemons of the continent. But because this is a collective responsibility and aspiration on the part of Africa, the AU, African Union, Summit of Heads of State and Government, charged responsibility of canvassing, promoting, and garnering support for the Common African Position in terms of the reform of the UN Security Council, espoused in two important documents that were signed by the heads of state and government of Africa. There's a Winnie Consensus and the SAT Declaration. These two documents have prescribed the nature of the request. And if it is anything that the entire Africa can go by, we want, as it was resoundingly stated by the President, 2 permanent seats and 2 additional non-permanent seats in the non-permanent category, which, like you mentioned, will come up with the number of seats to 7. It is very important for the P5 and the entire world to recognize Africa's presence in the Security Council. My country has been working with other members of the Council to drive initiatives, co-sponsor many of the resolutions since we came to the Council for peace and security. And I think 7 seats in total will be a very great stride to a very satisfactory end where Africa's voice proportionately should be heard.
Do you have any of those permanent members responded to this proposal so far?
Absolutely. In the Council, when the President made that plea, we heard all the P5 member states that had representatives in the Council. They all pretty much resonated with the need that Africa must have permanent representation in the permanent category. Look, I think this is justice delayed, but it is justice that I believe will be served to our African continent. Apart from what happened in the Council, we've had many occasions where the P5 countries, their heads of state and government, have indicated the need, the very imperative need for Africa to have representation in the permanent category with increased representation in the non-permanent category. It is but just and fair for it to be done.